Hello everyone, my name is Xueling. I'm a PhD student at the University of Texas at San Antonio. Today I'm going to talk about our work, how does misconfiguration of analytic service compromise mobile privacy? This is a collaboration work between UTSA and CMU. I wanted to start by discussing the analytic service ecosystem and what motivated this work. Analytic service has been widely utilized to track users' behavior on mobile apps. The collected behavior data is valuable for the app company to understand how their application works and what they can do to improve it. Let's see how it works. When a user is interacting with an app that's connected to an analytics server, user behavior data will be collected. They are basically everything the user does within the app, like which button the user clicked. On the other hand, users' other information like demographic data can also be collected. We call them as user attributes, like users' gender, location, and age. For example, the app company may want to know the age distribution of their users and how the behavior is different among different age groups. One thing that we need to know is that the attribute collection is just for statistical purpose, but not for any specific individual. When the behavior and attributes data have been collected, analytics service will generate a report for the app developer so that they can improve their application. At the same time, analytics service might collaborate with other advertising service to deliver targeted ads. So analytics service is pretty good for the app company collecting data. However, incorrectly configure the service might result in privacy risks. Recall that app developer could configure the tracking of the user behavior along with the user attributes, where the user's attributes are not supposed to be any sensitive information like social security number or email address. An example of misconfiguration will be using email address or phone number as users' attributes. In this case, the analytics server will receive those data and put them into the user's behavior report. This leads to an identifiable behavior report. Basically, they know who you are and everything you did on that app. Isn't this scary? Sounds like there's no privacy at all. So it is important that when app developer configure the analytics service, they should avoid using any sensitive information. Actually, there are some requirements from the analytics service provider. For example, Google's Firebase, which is the most popular analytics service provider, has the following statement. When you set user properties, be sure to never include personally identifiable information, such as names, social security numbers, or email address, even in hashed form. There's a similar suggestion from another popular analytics service called Flurry. We can see that they made it very clear that do not use any sensitive information as user attributes. But the question is whether the app developer always follows them in reality. So now we understand there are privacy concerns in the analytics service configuration. We can start asking questions. We studied by 4 research questions. What configuration options do analytics service provide? How commonly do app developers use PII when configuring analytics service? Do analytics service provide any mechanism to detect and prevent misconfiguration? Do analytics service misconfiguration result in violation of any policy? To get to those questions, we need to look into how to configure the user attributes. We learned that analytics services usually provide specific methods that allow app developers to set user attributes. We refer to those methods as attribute setting methods, or ASMs. For example, set user identifier. This method allows app developers to set a unique ID for the individual using the app. Another example is set user property. Basically, it allows us to set anything that we need. An example of misconfiguration would be using the phone number as a user's identifier, or put the email address as a user property. So knowing the ways to do the configuration, we developed a semi-automatic approach to detect misconfigurations, and we evaluate the most popular 1,000 Google Play Store apps that contain at least one ASM invocation in their code. We started by investigating the documentation of the most popular analytics services. We collected the attribute setting method from them. Also, to perform the study, we needed to create a user profile, includes a real Gmail account, the device identifier from our test mobile device, a fake username and full name. And then for each app, we decompile the APK file and instrument the ASMs within the app, and then we perform a runtime UI testing using the predefined user profile. And then later, in the system log, we're able to detect the misconfiguration by comparing the parameters that pass into those ASM with our predefined user profile. Please take a look at the paper if you're interested in the detail of the implementation. Let's talk about our findings. For that first question, we're trying to understand what configuration options do Analytic service provide. As the chart shows, we categorized the ASMs that we collected into those 7 types. And also, each column shows how many apps actually invoked those ASMs during the runtime testing among the 1,000 apps that are under study. We can see that a significant number of apps were using those ASMs. Okay, moving on. The second question is how many apps misconfigured the Analytic service by using PII as users' attributes. And our results shows that there are 120 apps used PII, includes email, username, IMEI, serial number, and the most commonly one is Android ID. So getting to the third question, do Analytic service provide any mechanism to predict or prevent such misconfiguration? It is very challenging to tell how the data is stored and processed on the server of the Analytic service. However, we can predict their practice from the analytic report they generate for the app developer. We found that whatever is provided through ASM will be directly linked to the behavior report without any encryption. Here's a sample report. We see that the email address, user ID, and username are presented in the report without any anonymization. Another sample report is showing the user ID, latitude, and longitude. This means that Analytic service provider did not prevent misconfiguration. Okay, the last question. Do Analytic service misconfiguration violate any policy? By inspecting the privacy policy of the 120 apps that have misconfiguration issue, we found that 27 of them may violate their own privacy policy, and also 31 of them may violate the requirement from the Analytic service. If you are interested in the detail, you can find everything in our website. So what did we learn from all of this? First, we believe misconfiguration could bring big privacy risks, and current enforcement efforts are just not sufficient yet to address the problem that we're facing. We have some recommendations for the future. First, enforcement is needed to prevent the misconfiguration. It could from multiple parties, from the app company, from Android system, from Analytic services, or from a third-party auditor. And second, static analysis techniques are desired to detect the data flow from the PII to the ASM. But one challenge is to detect the PII sources. Now I can take some questions.